It took more than a year for the city of Portland to open its first Safe Rest Village as a way to help the homeless crisis. People moved in last month.
Access to laundry and restroom services and clean clothes and food. I mean, it has like all the bases covered.
But now the federal government says there's a big old problem. The site is only supposed to be used for emergency management. We haven't talked about COVID for a while, but cases remain high and have not dropped like they were expected to.
A lot of people are getting COVID.
Plus, is the Pac-12 about to collapse?
It's clear that everybody, from politics to sports to households that are your key viewers, everybody's tuned into this. Everybody cares about this.
Here's the story.
I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. Lots to talk about on this casual holiday Friday. All the ways to communicate with us are at the bottom of your screen. You can email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com. You can use the hashtag TheStoryKGW on Twitter or leave us a voicemail. Call our phone number, 503-226-5090. One of Portland's solutions to address the homeless crisis just took a big hit. Plans to open 6 Safe Rest villages have already been delayed for months. Multnomah Village is up and running, but now it's in jeopardy. The federal government says, hold on. The city is violating restrictions on how it's allowed to use the property. Here's Blair Best.
This Safe Rest Village off Multnomah Boulevard at the former Sears Armory just finished being built, and those living on the streets have already moved in. But this could all change now that the Federal Emergency Management Agency is saying the city has violated deed restrictions when it comes to how this land is meant to be used.
I mean, it's been nice.
At the back of this parking lot sits 30 tiny homes for those formerly living on the streets.
It's obviously out of the downtown setting, so it's a lot less chaotic than being surrounded by people yelling all day.
It's the first of the city's 6 Safe Rest villages to help the homeless transition into permanent housing.
I mean, having access to laundry and restroom services and clean clothes and food. I mean, it has like all the bases covered, which you normally worry about when you're living on the streets. So with those covered, then you can have time to do other things.
This man didn't want to be identified on camera. He moved into the village on June 13th after staying at the outdoor temporary shelter in Old Town, which closed due to increased gun violence in that area. He's one of just 16 people currently living at this Safe Rest village.
It's only half full right now, which I don't understand.
A recent property assessment by FEMA may put the future of this village in jeopardy. Here's why. In 2012, the federal government allowed the city of Portland to use the property under the agreement that the city would use it only for emergency management services. According to Oregon law, that includes things like emergency response prevention training, mitigation, and recovery activities. Since then, the city has used the site for storing emergency response equipment and as a training ground for police practicing emergency response drills. And back in 2015, it was used as a temporary homeless shelter. Now, part of the parking lot is an organized camp where those experiencing homelessness can live for about 6 months at a time. In a recent property assessment, FEMA says they don't recognize the Safe Rest Village as emergency use. The city says they don't have the capacity to talk with us on camera, but the Office of Management and Finances said in a statement that they have, quote, declared a housing emergency and are moving forward with the development of the Safe Rest Village at this site in good faith to address this emergency. They go on to say we're working with FEMA on their suggestion to ensure compliance and meet this critical need. FEMA directed all questions pertaining to the property's deed restrictions to the General Services Administration. We reached out to them but did not hear back. KGW also reached out to All Good Northwest, the nonprofit running the village. They also declined to talk on camera, but said they will, quote, simply continue to do the work they're contracted to do, to shelter, support, and house individuals. The city is now working on ways to ensure they're in compliance with the federal government. As for those living at the village, they can stay here while the city works with the federal government to resolve these issues. In Southwest Portland, Blair Best, KGW News.
Let's check in on the progress of the other Safe Rest villages. The locations in green on the map, Multnomah and Queer Affinity Village, are already open. Queer Affinity Village has actually existed for years, but just recently moved to the new site, so it didn't actually add any more housing. The villages that have not opened yet are the red dots on the map. The city is still working on permits for most of them, so they're still in the early stages. We'll keep you posted on the progress. which, as we've reported, has been super slow so far. Huge changes are underway in the college football world here in the West, and it may really impact what you see and who you see playing on TV in the coming years. It also leaves some of us wondering if the Pac-12 will survive. Let's take a closer look. The two marquee schools, USC and UCLA, bailed yesterday. They left the Pac-12, so now I guess maybe it's the Pac-10, in my mind anyway. They left for the Big Ten, which includes big teams like Michigan and Nebraska and Ohio State and others. Sports talk show host and columnist John Canzano told me today money, huge money, is behind this move.
Yeah, it's really sad. I mean, we have a weird time in our sports landscape where, we're watching money drive everything. Like it's always been there, but it hasn't always transcended history and tradition. The Pac-12 conference was founded in downtown Portland 107 years ago at a hotel that no longer exists anymore. And the conference, the members had largely stuck together, thick and thin. They were obviously operating with a revenue model that was insufficient compared to the SEC and the Big Ten. But the hope was that in 2024 that they would negotiate a new media rights deal and catch up. They can't do that now because they don't have the Los Angeles market. That market has been removed from the equation. So, we're talking about a lot of tradition, a lot of upset people across the conference. I've talked to people in Salt Lake City and in Phoenix and in Seattle. Everybody's going through the same thing where they're lamenting the loss of this conference and a lot of uncertainty now on the horizon.
Although, won't they still have Stanford in the California market?
Yeah, they'll have Stanford in the Bay Area, but Stanford and Cal in the Bay Area are interesting. That is a big media market, but they don't get great ratings. Like you have a transient community there in the Bay Area, a lot of transplants. That LA market was really 60 to 70% of the media equation for the entire conference. And so you have removed that. That is significant. George Kliavkoff, the Pac-12 commissioner, is now, they met with the ADs and the presidents in a virtual call today. They talked about, hey, we have to look at expansion options. I also think that they're going to consider a merger with the Big 12 conference. So keep an eye on that. Those Big 5 conferences, the Power 5, have now been reduced to the Power 2, the Big 10 and the SEC. So I think the Big 12 and the Pac-12 have something in common here, and I think they could come together in like a 20-team conference and try to rival what is going on in the Big 10 and the SEC.
This may be obvious for you because you live in that world, but couldn't the Pac-10 survive with just losing those two schools? Don't they already have a media deal, and wouldn't the next one be pretty good too? You still got Oregon.
Yeah, right now they could, in the short term, for the next 2 years, live as the old Pac-12. USC and UCLA are going to have to be part of this conference. But what we're seeing in the college sports landscape when it comes to media rights deals, the Big Ten's deal with Fox is $1 billion a year. That's $100 million that they are basically saying, hey, look, UCLA, USC, you'll be getting $100 million each by the time you join the Big Ten conference. And by the way, that's every year $100 million. By comparison, the Pac-12's current media rights deal gives USC and UCLA about $33 million a year. They are at a tremendous deficit every year to the Big Ten and the SEC. So the Pac-12 could cruise along as is, but they're going to be cruising along at $50 million a year less than their peers. And that's difficult to compete with when you stretch that over a decade and say, hey, look, Oregon State, Oregon, go compete with the Big Ten schools. And, Oregon has been a little bit of an outlier because they have Phil Knight, right? And they're funded at a level with gift giving that others aren't. But at some point, that $50 million a year is just too much to overcome. So the Pac-12's got to do something. They either have to add teams to the Pac-12 conference, or they're going to have to merge with the Big 12 and create something that is more appealing to ESPN and some other providers.
So interesting how it becomes an arms race that you're talking about and how our schools are now being left behind.
Yeah, and look, I talked to lawmakers in Washington today, lawmakers in Oregon today. They reached out to me because they were interested in weighing in on this. And what they want to do is they want to create some kind of provision or maybe legislation that ties Oregon and Oregon State together and Washington State together, so that you don't get a case where Oregon and Washington, for example, defect to the Big Ten Conference and leave the Beavers and the Cougars behind. I don't know if I support that. I frankly don't know if it means anything. It may just be a gesture at best. But it's clear that everybody, from politics to sports to households that are your key viewers, everybody's tuned into this. Everybody cares about this.
Yes, they do. John Canzano, so good. Stay tuned on this one. No one seems to know for sure how this is going to go. By the way, what's your reaction to all this? Do you think the LA schools are being greedy? Maybe they're just being realistic. Is this a sign that big college football has gotten out of hand? Or is it just market forces that are rising the best teams up to the top? Send me an email. Let me know what you think. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Well, here's something we have not shown you for a long time, a graph of Oregon's COVID cases. Although, since most of the people you know probably have it or recently had it, we're still very much in a pandemic, and this graph shows it. Cases have stayed high for about 2 months, even though OHSU forecasters initially thought they would drop in June. So, what's this mean for the rest of the summer? Here's Tim Gordon.
One thing we know about COVID-19 is that it has taken some unexpected turns at times. So predicting what to expect in a coming month is not easy.
And so this is kind of a late ad.
In fact, it has OHSU's Peter Graven working into the holiday weekend, getting a handle on the outlook for July. The late adds into the mix are Omicron subvariants BA4 and 5 that have come on strong in Oregon.
We didn't really know exactly what the impact was going to be. There's some speculation, and now I think we have a pretty good idea that indeed we will see some increased infection rates.
In fact, health officials say the subvariants are now responsible for more than half of new cases. The spread has the CDC upping the COVID transmission risk level to high in most Oregon counties. All the red on this map is high risk, including our most populated places.
More and more we're going back to kind of normal levels of social interaction.
Oregon Public Health's Dr. Paul Cieslak is not surprised by the CDC's take.
A lot of people are getting COVID, and then, they are spreading it to some people who are being hospitalized by it. Probably predominantly people who either haven't been vaccinated or who are at risk of severe disease despite vaccination because of underlying medical conditions.
In fact, we've watched the number of people hospitalized with COVID going up in June, and this week a mini spike with hospitalizations going from 357 to 399 to 402, and the latest today, 418. Graven had predicted a plateau mid-June, but says it was actually a lesser-known subvariant, BA2.12.1, that upset that prediction.
That mostly just kind of extended the time that we've had this higher infection rate, and I expect BA4 and BA5 to do something similar.
Tim Gordon, KGW News.
Washington has one of the highest numbers of missing indigenous people in the U.S. Starting today, the state has a new system to try and change that.
The alert system does something very simple for us as Native American women. It takes the hand away from the mouth so you can hear the unheard screams.
When the story continues.
Welcome back. Keep sending your questions and comments to the story at kgw.com or give us a call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Washington State has the second highest number of missing indigenous people in the entire country. The state hopes a new alert system is going to help change that. PJ Randhawa explains how it works and how it could help.
On your phone and on the road, starting July 1st, Washingtonians will start seeing missing persons alerts specifically about Indigenous people. It's called the Missing Indigenous Person Alert, or MIPA. While Indigenous people make up less than 2% of Washington's population, studies show Indigenous women are 4 times more likely to go missing than white women and face murder rates more than 10 times the national average.
We just want to be heard. We want to know that our lives matter, and we want to be found. And that's what this alert system does at the end of the day.
Representative Deborah Lekanoff, the only Indigenous woman in Washington's House of Representatives, says the alert will streamline tribal and local police jurisdiction issues, which have historically hampered missing persons investigations.
No, I'm not so alone that I won't sit in my house and wonder why no one's helping me find my daughter and why there's no police. They will contact the local police, the state police, and now the broadcast will go out in my local area.
Here's how it works. When a person is reported missing to tribal or local police, the investigator on the case now has the option to ask Washington State Patrol to issue an alert.
How do you decide who gets an alert?
Is it an imminent danger situation, and would activation of that alert assist in the recovery? As law enforcement, we kind of have to make that decision. Sometimes it's a tough decision. So this is an example of what the flyer is going to look like.
Once activated, you could see the MIPA alert on highway signs, social media, and on WSP's Twitter page.
When we put these flyers together, we'll be adding photos of the missing person and any associated vehicles.
The MIPA alerts won't be as visible as Amber alerts, but that could change by the end of the year.
Future technology will allow us to geographically target the alerts.
Representative Lekanoff says the MIPA alert model could soon be replicated in Canada and across the U.S.
We're getting responses from the attorney generals across the state, across all the states.
For those still searching for missing loved ones, like the family of Mary Johnson, the alert is welcome news that they say could have made all the difference.
Do you think something like that would have helped?
If this was back when Mary first was reported missing, of course, I believe she probably would have been found.
The alert system does something very simple for us as Native American women. It takes the hand away from the mouth so you can hear the unheard screams.
That was PJ Randhawa reporting. Still ahead, what do you think of fireworks? Are they fun and entertaining or obnoxious and triggering for pets and veterans? We want to hear from you when the story continues. We're on the verge of a 3-day weekend and the 4th of July. It's a day that brings parades in some towns, rodeos in others, and fireworks in many more. But this year we're seeing bans on personal neighborhood fireworks in both Vancouver and Portland. No mortars. Okay, those have been illegal for a while. But no flaming fountains, not even any sparklers. All of it forbidden in Portland and Vancouver. Vancouver's ban actually started with the 4th of July back in 2017. I had a chance to ask the mayor today if people are actually following the rules.
Yes and no. It was part of it, as you're well aware of. We had an extraordinarily wonderful opportunity with fireworks for decades. In fact, my husband's Aunt Mary was part of the 4th of July fireworks, the best ones west of the Mississippi. But as we became more and more aware of the impacts and the fire danger and everything else, we realized it really didn't have a place in our very tight urban setting. And as we looked at it, more and more people realized, as they were educated, that they didn't need them, and there are other ways to celebrate the 4th of July. So a lot of people do not use fireworks. A lot of people go elsewhere and enjoy professional displays, but we still have some individuals who like to shoot them off, run like crazy, hope no one finds them.
There's still a number of towns around Vancouver where the fireworks are legal. Beaverton is a city which has talked about banning fireworks but has not done it yet. Mayor Lacey Beatty cannot order that ban, but she has tried to convince the city council to outlaw fireworks 2 years in a row and failed each year. She told me today she's one of many military veterans disturbed by the unpredictable noises from the personal fireworks, and she wishes they would stop.
And this is one of the few topics that we have resoundingly heard from our community asking us to ban them to do it. So we did a whole session this year with the city council, and they decided that the only way that they would ban fireworks is if it got to a certain temperature threshold, and they would consider an emergency meeting to do it. It doesn't look like we're going to hit that temperature threshold this year, so it's legal in the city of Beaverton this year.
And for those who have not had a chance to read your op-eds or hear your thoughts, could you just kind of briefly talk about, as a veteran, for example, what it is about the neighborhood fireworks that are disturbing?
Well, first I want to preface that not every veteran experiences the same thing, but a lot of veterans that have experienced war like myself, it's the unexpected loud noises. So my family and I, we can go and visit a firework display and enjoy that like everyone else, but it's that time when you're at home, when you're comforted in your sleep, you're sleeping at 1 a.m., then all of a sudden you hear them going off again. Because if our community only set fireworks off at, say, 8 p.m. on July 4th, then that wouldn't be a problem. The problem is people doing it for days at a time at all hours of the night, causing complete disruption to neighborhoods, to animals, to dogs, to veterans. So for someone like me that's experienced war, it's very hard over the 4th of July weekend to feel safe in my own home because I have to feel like I have to be on high alert.
So here's my take on all this. I grew up on a dead-end road outside of Seattle, and we loved to shoot off fireworks. We had firecrackers and bottle rockets and piccolo Petes, and my dad would crimp the piccolo Pete with a vice grip, and when the fuse burned down to that point where it was crimped, the whole thing would blow up. It was awesome. Fireworks to me always represented fun, a celebration of freedom, a gathering of community. Our relatives and all the neighbors would all come together, and the fireworks would cap off the night. And when I first moved to Portland 32 years ago and you could still buy mortars in Vancouver, I may have launched a few in my own neighborhood as we created new memories. Over the years, I've also worked on the 4th of July many times, and I've been impressed by the number of picnics and parades and gatherings on the day, often accompanied by drinks and neighborhood fireworks. Those gatherings are more important than ever now after 2 years of COVID. But I've also become more aware of the impact of the loud noises that they have on our veterans and our pets. Part of me wants the 4th of July fun I had on our dead-end street to last forever, but not at the expense of so many in our cities. Portland is banning fireworks for the second year in a row now. They say it will cut down on neighborhood fires and injuries, and that's a good thing. Hopefully, there'll also be fewer explosions going off at 1 in the morning and fewer veterans jolted awake in a panic. We can still gather with friends and family this 4th of July, but just without the neighborhood fireworks. We can still create memories and be thankful we live in America. The day's really not about the fireworks. It's about that, right? We don't need things that throw sparks and go boom to celebrate living in America. As fun as they were, we can feel the joy and the love of this special holiday without the neighborhood fireworks where they're banned. Well, that's my opinion. What's yours? Do you love fireworks? What's your best memory of them? Where did you go to see fireworks? What did you do? Do you hate them? Do you hate the neighborhood kind and love the professional kind? I don't know. Let me know what you're thinking. Shoot me an email. The address is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail. The number is 503-226-5090. Keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com. Coming up, we'll introduce you to some of the people we're raising money for this week, right after this. This week, our Hey Help campaign goes to Friends of Service of Humanity, or FISH, of Vancouver. They're a food pantry that's been around for more than 50 years. They feed more than 1,000 families a month, but they say their inventory is low right now and the need is high. To donate, turn your phone's camera on and hold it up to the QR code there on your screen. That'll take you to a donation page. Or you can go to kgw.com/heyhelp. We went to the food pantry this week to meet some of the folks they help.
It's a humbling experience for me to be here. I don't work, only my husband works, but we live from paycheck to paycheck, and I'm so thankful that they have this here, because it's not only for the homeless and the needy, it's also for people like me.
Back in February, we were doing about 1,200 families, and every month since we've been adding a couple hundred families. We're up to 1,892 families in May. We haven't completed June yet.
That is a big need. Here's the QR code again. Remember, this is a micro donation drive, so feel free to give any amount, no matter how small. Well, that's the end of our program. Thanks for watching. But remember, the story, our story, well, that never ends. I'll see you Monday.
This is KGW News at 6:30.
And first at 6:30, bracing for protest tonight. A Catholic church in